Right on. Welcome back to another 𝐥𝐴𝐽 show. This one was Pradhyum from Emrit, running the IoT program there. If I'm getting that generally right, head of product at IoT. So,
yeah, head of IoT and 5G. That's what I do at Emrit.
Super excited to see that Emrit is paying attention to that stuff. But before we get into what they're doing in the light hotspot stuff, can you give me a little bit of background on who you are and how you came to this position?
Sure. Hey, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I've watched several of your shows, so appreciate being here. So, as Nick said, I am head of IoT and 5G at Emrit. The best way to describe me is I'm half engineer, half business guy. I'm excited to bring new technologies to market. So prior to Emrit, I was at AT&T, basically doing IoT business development at AT&T for 3 years. And prior to that, I was in the semiconductor space at Texas Instruments, doing embedded systems and everything from sales management to product management at TI.
Okay, so like equal parts, as you said, kind of geek and business background.
That's kind of about me. Represents me. Yeah, I need that mix.
Yeah. What were you into growing up? Were you always into this kind of business and tech stuff, or was it something different for you?
Actually, Nick, no. My first 6 to 7 years of my career, I was like a coder, right? I used to code. Before what's now known as AI and machine learning, there was a concept called digital signal processing, DSP as it was called. So I was one of the early guys in the DSP space. We were coding like speech coding algorithms and echo cancellation algorithms and crazy stuff, all in assembly. It was good old days.
Yeah.
When we didn't have a compiler, right?
Yeah, a little bit
so
different.
That's where I started.
Yeah. And you went to school for that? That's what you went to school for, was coding?
I'm an electrical engineer by qualifications. Okay. So I did that, and I got tired of being in a cubicle coding, and I said, okay, I'm going to try something different. And I joined TI, and TI is where I took my sales role, and then did sales management, and then product management. And then I got tired of the semiconductor industry and said, okay, let me go try the biggest company there is in the world, AT&T, and go work at AT&T for a while. It was fun. AT&T kind of gave me the whole enterprise knowledge, enterprise IoT. I've probably seen pretty much any IoT use case that there is, right? So because AT&T, you get to see a lot of things.
Yeah.
It was a fun job. And a friend of mine recruited me into Emrit, and here I am.
And then what was it about Emrit that you were like, that had you super excited when you got that call? Like, what was it that made you take this job? Were you looking for something? Were you kind of doing something already? Were you like, what was it in Emrit that you're like, oh, this is going to be cool?
So for me, it was more about learning about blockchain than a new way of doing things, right? Again, working at one of the large carriers, you have market power, right? It's market power. The guy goes, but at the same time, the industry is changing. The IoT network, IoT has been spoken about for a very, very long time. But even for a major carrier, IoT becomes a challenge because you have patchy corners of the world where you don't get connectivity. And the worst thing you can think of doing is, doing an application like asset tracking with patchy coverage. I mean, it's going to jump from one place to another, and you're not going to know where it is. This idea was interesting because, first of all, LoRa allows you to set it up wherever you want. The cost of setting up infrastructure is fairly low. And then when you combine it with the blockchain concept, you basically are giving people the power to go start their own network or manage their own network without them actually not quite realizing what they're doing, right? I mean, they are inadvertently, but in a very positive manner, creating the network infrastructure, which is kind of what excited me, and that's why I'm at Emrit, because Emrit, we deploy Helium gateways in large scale.
You guys do. You guys have a lot of gateways, kind of under whatever management or control or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then on the IoT side, was that a specific, I guess, spectrum? Was that kind of in LoRa, or was that all over the place? Was it just kind of machines in general? Had you seen LoRa before you came to Emrit?
Um, I have seen 𝗲𝗏, right? Because I've kind of been a geek for a
Yeah.
while and in the IoT space, so definitely know about 𝗲𝗏. And but the AT&T or the carrier side of things is basically on your cell phone,
Yeah.
right? Basically, like your cell phone, you have much more cut down devices. It doesn't need to have a screen. It doesn't need to have several of the elements of your smartphone.
Right.
So you can actually shrink down the cost of that into a tiny. It's still not tiny. It's kind of expensive for a cellular based sensor, but that's the industry that I come from, right?
Right.
Where you have cellular based infrastructure as the carrier to transport the IoT data.
Right. So you're basically, if we're thinking of it in terms that I can understand, is on the cell side, they're just using like a river to carry a leaf. Like it's a giant amount of data that they've got. You don't really need all of that for IoT, or am I not thinking of that the right way?
It depends, right? It depends. For certain use cases, you're 100% right. Like, let's say, hey, I have a sensor, a water monitoring sensor sitting somewhere. Um, I I don't need I don't quite need a cellular connection
Right.
to take that data and put it on the
Yeah.
cloud. All I need is a low bandwidth connection. But there are applications, like if you think about video analytics, for example, and if you look
Okay.
at things that are very high bandwidth, definitely cellular is the way to go.
Okay.
But the cost of doing cellular for very tiny applications is you have an inherent high cost of the sensor because you need to put all that cellular radio stuff into your sensor.
Yeah.
Second big thing is battery power, right?
Yeah.
So you need to even the most optimal cellular sensor has a pretty big battery. When you come to the LoRa domain, you look at batteries lasting for 10 years. You look
Crazy.
at and that's a different ballgame. And so you're able to reduce the cost of the sensors, right?
Right. And
Significantly.
it's almost kind of order of magnitude, right? Is that you can do a $30 to $80 sensor on the LoRa side. That, I mean, would that be run kind of whatever 300 to 800 on the cell side, or it totally depends?
I think LoRa can be much more inexpensive based on what you're trying to do. So I mean, you can have LoRa sensors if you're just doing basic telemetry or something like that. It could be as low as 10 to $15.
It's crazy.
Whereas cellular would be like at least two or three orders of magnitude higher than that.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's super cool to be on this side of the kind of coming tidal wave. That's what I look at this, is that it's been out there for a while, but yeah, figuring it out now.
Yeah, I should add that the flip side is the LoRa networks were very patchy. When you look at LoRa outside the Helium space, it was very patchy. So yeah, you put a gateway in there, it covers 10 miles of radius or whatever. So outside that 10 miles, you're dead in the water, right? Which is where cellular actually was a very, very good solution. But Helium addresses that problem because you have enough redundancy of gateways within. I mean, in some cases, maybe too redundant.
In many cases, too redundant.
But in most cases, you're able to have a pretty large cluster of gateways that cover cities and towns, which makes it quite interesting for an IoT use case.
Yeah. That's super cool. I got us off track on IoT. I think IoT is kind of easily the most exciting thing to learn about right now. But let's hit with what's going on right now, which is the transition to light hotspots. And for folks who haven't seen them before and are still, there's 800,000 hotspots in the network. There's probably, I don't know what the wallet number is, 100,000, 200,000. There's a lot of people who are still like, I mean, I'm talking to them today doing consults, and they're like, hey, my miner's down. What do you think is going on? It's like, oh, there's this thing happening. But yeah, walk me through light hotspots and maybe a specific perspective that you have.
Well, let's start from the beginning, right? So Helium came up with this beautiful miner, and they basically started building on it. So the miner basically keeps a copy of the blockchain, and so every proof of coverage, every data transfer is recorded on the miner and every other miner.
Yep.
So as you can see, when the network exploded, the blockchain couldn't keep up. Right? Because ultimately, when you look at many of these miners, they're Raspberry Pi based single board computers with limited memory that are not capable of doing it. The thing about SD cards, which is used in many of these devices, for those of you that don't know, SD cards, you may use it on a camera and it might feel like it lasts forever, but actually when you use an SD card and you write to it over and over again, it eventually dies. And with the number of blockchain transactions being written over and over again, many of the miners just went offline.
Yeah.
In addition to which,
what do you think is what do you think is an average lifespan? Like I remember replacing all my stuff with high endurance cards early on. I haven't thought to check them much since, but what should folks expect out of an SD card, at least up until now?
That's a hard question for me to answer, but I would say, I can say that several SD cards that were active on the blockchain just crapped out after a while.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say, in the blockchain, in the Helium blockchain space, if you've been using an SD card for over 6 months, it's time for you to go check it. Okay. Because a lot of the cells die, and then it just breaks.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the primary problem, and basically what's happening is, as the network grows, everybody is trying to sync up with the blockchain and trying to sync the database of the blockchain. The blockchain is so huge that you're constantly in a race to catch up with the blockchain, so you are in sync issues.
Yep.
And then the other major problem is like 50% of the miners out there are also in relayed mode. So basically, you need to open this weird port on your router to actually talk to the gateway, and that weirdness is required because you are actually a validator of the network, right? You're basically saying, you're kind of doing some transactions in the background, and basically those transactions are coming through that port that you open on your router. So these are all standard problems, and as a result of it, especially for a large fleet operator like Emrit, we just found several devices hung in relayed mode, bad SD cards, sync issues. So you're not able to build a sustainable business where you can say that this one is mining. Even if you're a miner, if you didn't have anything to do with IoT, even if you're a miner, you're looking at this and saying, hey, I cannot mine reliably on this one. And when you look at it from an IoT standpoint, if your network is not stable, nobody is going to build a network on those unstable devices. Yeah. Okay, so Helium came up with this brilliant idea of, hey, why do we need to store the blockchain on the hotspot? Why don't we move it elsewhere? Well, if you centralize it, it kind of breaks the model of decentralized networks. So again, you don't want centralization. So a better model, and I commend Helium for that, is they moved some portion of it into a distributed node in the blockchain called the validators. So essentially what happens is the syncing aspect of it, and several other aspects of assigning a miner to prove its location is moved to the validator node, which is sitting on the cloud. And since it's sitting on the cloud, it is not dependent on any hardware-specific constraints that a hotspot might have. And that solves the problem to a big extent. So the light hotspot is that. Hopefully I got that right, Nick.
Yeah, it appears to be right to me. I always break it down on the kind of compute side and the radio side, and the compute side is going over to the validators. But there is some centralization that's going on with validators, but at the same time, it's kind of weighing it out. That it's an existential crisis for Helium, where they've got to fix it. They cannot keep going with what we had. So this seems like the best solution for me, or from my perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. And we are right in the middle. I mean, as we do this interview, this is Friday. They started the rollout on Wednesday. How do you feel it's going so far?
Actually, at Emrit, we deploy a whole variety of manufacturers, so we get to see the whole spectrum.
Yep.
I was very impressed to see many of the things automatically. Basically, it pushed a software update, and if people are used to seeing syncing and synced state, that goes away. It just says connected over there. Maybe you can throw a snapshot of what that connected status looks like.
Yeah.
And voila, you're done. In some of the manufacturers' case, we had to go and force a software update to make sure they had downloaded. In fact, I had one manufacturer who had like 3 different updates. Pretty much he made an update 2 days back, 1 day back, and even yesterday he made an update. And they're all trying to catch up. Overall, and the earnings, so it's synced up, and the earnings kind of started. It wasn't witnessing as many as it used to witness, and I think there's some network level issues going on. But overall, I would say it's been fairly smooth compared to a lot of other things that we've encountered in the past.
Yeah, I mean that's the same general sense. Is that I kind of expected it to be. I expect actually to be a little bit worse than it is, and I know I talked to a couple of the Helium folks, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this thing is pretty much done." It's like, man, I think it's going to take like a week for everything to settle out and sort itself out. They may finish.
The earnings are still poor. I haven't pre-move to light hotspot. Again, just want to make sure people understand. It's the full hotspots that have been, is degraded the right word, or upgraded? Maybe upgraded to the light hotspot. In terms of firmware. There's another breed of hardware devices that are going to have lower performance that's not yet in the market. So this is basically just your existing hardware performing in the light minor hardware. And but so when I look at pre-migration and post-migration, I still find the earnings to be low, but I don't see relayed mode. I don't see synced mode. Right. I don't see many of the things that I once saw.
I wonder why it's like, so I've just got a couple of the DIY miners, and those things have been earning off the hook. And I think it's because I can, as soon as they put the software out, I manually went and updated each one of them. And so I think they've just been on the whole time. And as 50 or more percentage of the network went down, they were just up to reap the benefit of all the HNT out there. But that's just a couple miners. It certainly wasn't like across a large fleet like you guys are seeing. But I'm curious to see. I mean, the long term, I would expect is that the health of the network goes up, but the average earning will go down because more hotspots are going to be online to split out the 2.5 million HNT that gets released every month.
Yeah, that's going to happen. But when we look at it as a large fleet operator, we really think that it's going to be net positive because many of the units that were in sync mode and relayed mode and things like that are just going to perform better.
Yeah,
and I think that's where it's going to go.
Yep, and that's the benefit to the community right there, right? Is that like the whole network is more stable.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. So that gets us through kind of the light hotspot, what it is and what's going on. And then what's Emrit doing to kind of prep for that, whatever the next step is for you guys?
So next step is, firstly, many people have been frustrated by the miners performing poorly or, never got a miner out of relayed mode. We have so many people who just unplugged it and kept their miners away. We are proactively reaching out to all those guys and say, hey, this new update is going to solve world hunger, right? So connect it to the internet.
Yeah, plug back in. Interesting.
Right. And with all the relayed mode gone, sync mode gone, now finally you are at a point where an average user, a non-technical user, can actually use this device. Second thing is, like I said, SD cards were a problem. So we are looking at, one of the advantage of being an Emrit host is we actually repair the unit for you. So, if somebody is in that state, we basically are saying, hey, ship your unit back. We'll replace the SD card and send it back to you so that, you have almost like a new miner, right? So you can actually start earning again.
And they can't replace the SD card on their own.
You can. I mean, I would say in a scale of 1 to 10, it probably falls in 5.
Yeah.
And some manufacturers, you need to copy over files and do stuff. And in other manufacturers, you need to know what's the right software to load. So I mean, for a tech geek, it's probably simple, or maybe tech geek is also not the right word. If you're a hands-on guy, you'll probably figure it out.
Yeah.
But if you're not so hands-on and you need help, I mean, and many of our Emrit hosts are not very hands-on. They just want something that works.
Yeah.
We can actually do it for them.
Which is fair. Yeah. So you guys must have a whole facility where it comes in one door and goes through like 9 different checks. And
it's
crazy.
Something we are working on. Yeah, for sure.
That sounds like it's a warehouse now with like a ton of tables and people just madly scrambling to get things done, which is...
Yeah, it's a simple task, but somebody got to do it, right?
Yeah, totally.
So the third area we are looking up is we're actually stocking up. Again, Emrit's mission is to have helium all over the place, right? In the US, all worldwide. So we are actually stocking up. So we have some direct relationship with manufacturers. We're stocking up on devices and making it available to anybody who wants one, right? And part of that is, our new pricing plan. So we actually are launching a couple of new pricing plans. Initially, today, if you go to Emrit, you have to pay $199 and you get 50% of the earnings. We're launching a pricing plan at $99 where you get 30% of the earnings, and a $299 plan where you can get 70% of the earnings. So basically 70% to the host and 30% to Emrit. So again, there are so many use cases and so many personas we're trying to match.
Yeah.
If you're an IoT company, for example, doing propane tank monitoring, would you go and buy a $700 LoRa gateway in the open market? Or this is an alternative way for them to reduce the cost and still do what they want to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So is that part of the kind of business targeting side for you guys, is saying like, hey, we're not just looking for folks who are in their house. We're looking for folks who are actually going to use the network, and then, addressing them.
Absolutely.
Super smart.
Absolutely. And with the light hotspot, for example, since it's going to be more available, right? The network is going to be more available. Yeah. I think there's going to be a whole bunch of use cases. Helium is the largest LoRaWAN network in the world, period, right? So if you want to do IoT and you don't want to, get in the cellular route, which might not be the best use case for everyone, just roaming on Helium is fantastic.
Yeah.
The cost of data on Helium LoRa network is the lowest in the market. Nobody can beat it. It's like 10 to the power minus 3 cents for one packet.
It's
I can't even say that number in financial terms, right?
Right. It's
1 microcent, one millicent. That's what it is.
It's wild. Yeah. I was kind of worried about a device, and I let it run for a week, and I think it was like 5 cents a week for this thing to be firing stuff out every minute. It's crazy. So
a lot of IoT use cases, and those use cases are going to benefit heavily from the cost of data.
Yep.
And now that like miners, if the network gets more stable, it's going to be very useful.
Yeah. Let's see. So are you guys thinking about kind of targeting, let's say, ag tech stuff or ranchers, or is it more you're looking for someone who's running a fleet of like propane tanks, or like the one I thought early on was porta potties, is putting a little ultrasonic sensor on a porta potty. Like, when that thing's full, you can insert your joke here, but you can save a lot of money.
All of the above, Nick. We are seeing a lot of traction from telecom operators. We are seeing a lot of traction from people that provide technology to, say, cattle ranchers, people that are providing technology to propane tank monitors, insurance companies. So we are seeing a whole suite of IoT companies that are looking at this and saying, hey, the only thing that prevented me from going and deploying these devices, even LoRa devices, was the cost of hardware.
Right.
Now, when Emrit comes in and we are able to subsidize the cost of hardware, it suddenly becomes a very, it reduces the barrier to entry for somebody to go deploy IoT gateways and IoT sensors in wherever they want.
And I mean, in their case, that you may be dealing with companies who don't really care about crypto. That's like a little bit of gravy for them, but the coverage is the important piece.
Exactly.
Right.
And we care about the crypto. We care about the use cases too.
Yeah.
But that provides us an opportunity to actually provide more value in an IoT value chain, right?
Yeah. Oh, so you're in like one of the top IoT positions in the world then, probably, because you've got this giant you got this giant network to use. You've got the network kind of power or the industrial power to use it, and you guys are into the crypto piece. Like, how does that feel? Is that super exciting?
Yeah, very good. Yeah. It's very good. But again, I think, Nick, where we may run into problem and what we are actually thinking ahead of time is when you go deal with a large carrier, for example, you have net ops, you have fleet operators, you have people sitting on a computer managing the network uptime, right?
Yep.
And even in a commercial LoRa installation, you would have tools and you would have the capabilities to manage your uptime. And that is actually a gap in the Helium space, because Helium, its individual users are using it as IoT gateways, and there isn't an entity that can go manage the uptime. And uptime could be as simple as, hey, somebody knocked off the Ethernet cord on the device, or somebody knocked off the power supply.
Right.
But I mean, you don't realize it when it happens in your house, but that might actually be getting in the way of servicing somebody who's reliant on that network, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've been looking at more closely and actually looking for partners is developing a fleet management solution. So people can actually manage fleets of devices. It doesn't have to be Emrit. It could be pretty much anybody who's trying to do an IoT service, managing fleets of devices, and basically being able to, at some point in time, throw what's a SLA, maybe an availability score on top of that network. So, and it goes all the way, right? Like when you're deploying a large fleet, it goes from first procuring the equipment to deploying the equipment to managing fleet of equipment. And Emrit is actually playing in all these areas, not just for our own fleet, but also enabling other fleet operators to manage their devices and help them build their network.
Right. So you're let me make sure I'm getting this right. So you're seeing folks who bought 100 or 1,000 or 3,000 or whatever it is hotspots, and they're coming to you or they're interacting with you and saying, "Hey, can we use your dashboard for managing our fleet?"
Yep.
And what like is there? And when you said SLA, that's service level agreement, and basically for us normal people, like that means that there's a promise from a company that a network will exist, right? When you,
yeah. I mean, we are not there yet. Just to be very clear, we're not there yet, but we are in the beginning of creating something that will allow us to do that. We are working directly with hardware manufacturers to build us devices, integrate more tightly in the software side, so that we can get to the point where we are able to guarantee that SLA, and we have fleet management and ability to reset network connections, reset power connections, do modifications without having to connect to a Bluetooth and talk to the device. And I mean, that's not very sustainable from a fleet operator standpoint.
No. You can't have that. Interesting. And then I guess light hotspots make that like much cheaper to do, because you don't have to have all the extra compute power that a Raspberry Pi does. Is there a level down from what you call an 𝗪𝐶, a single board computer, like an even smaller, kind of less powerful thing? And that's what these light hotspots are going to be on?
I think it can take two directions. Definitely, light hotspots for people who are just interested in mining or something. So today, of course, it's all hypothetical because today there's such a dearth of semiconductor inventory that just because I can use a less powerful processor and a less powerful memory doesn't change anything because the chip manufacturers are not even making as many devices as they need to. So there's a big wait list, right?
Yeah.
So and people are buying chips in the gray market to actually build the miner that's shipping to your home, right? So it is like what a gray market means is if a particular chip costs $1 in the regular market, people are paying like $10 to buy that because they cannot find this unit anywhere else, or they have to wait for 12 months to get the chip that they want. So because of that reason, because of the lack of inventory of chips, what's happening is the price of miners are not going to immediately come down. Just because your processing requirements reduce doesn't mean you're going to be able to go and buy a miner dirt cheap in the next month.
No.
But eventually, you take 6 months or maybe a slightly longer time frame, you're going to see the price of the miners drop. So they're going to be lower cost miners. I can't tell you how much they cost, but lower cost miners that are going to be available for people that want to use it. I also see, people integrating more features. Maybe there is a creativity piece where you could take an existing miner and add more workloads on top of it to do more things, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there is a high, mid, and low tier of miners that are going to be available in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I've thought about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it seems that the data is valuable. If you can sell a hotspot that also produces data and processes that data, you don't need to worry about too much about the cost of the processing because it's so cheap. But the value of the data can be high enough. One example is there's a company that does air quality stuff, not Planet Watch. And I was talking with them, and they said that you can deploy I don't think it's a miner. I think it's just an air quality sensor. Deploy it on your roof, and the EPA will pay you for access to that air quality sensor because the EPA doesn't have enough air quality data. And I think that kind of thing, because people gotten used to miners that interact with the real world, with the meat space, like they're used to this kind of blockchain plus meat space project, is we may see some miners coming along that are not light kind of compute side. They may be light miners that, not having to sync to the blockchain, but they may have a whole sensor package with them that allows you to access that kind of value flow, which would be pretty cool. Is that something you guys are looking at developing or working on, or are you just like watching the market?
We are watching that market, right? Basically, until now, we weren't at a point where the network was so stable enough that we could actually invest in those cases.
Yeah.
I mean, the last thing you want is you're doing flood detection monitoring and your miner is in sync mode, and
it's not detecting anything.
The flood in the house is not detected by the unit. That's the worst case IoT nightmare, right? Like which all IoT people who have been in the IoT space worry about. But now with the light miners, hopefully that gets better, and we can start thinking more about what are the sensing capabilities, what are the use cases that you can build on it. The data is damn cheap. I mean, I just want to restate that. I mean, 10 to the power minus 3 cents is millicent is dirt cheap.
Yeah, it's crazy because it allows you to take a really low value, really low value data flow and pay for it because it's even cheaper to process the data than the data itself. So you start thinking about things like, I don't know, like the amount of rain that falls, that's got some value, and it may have more value than the 10 to the power negative 3 cents to collect it. And so to me, it makes the world become really exciting because we now will begin to have the ability to objectively assess the world at scale and level that we've never been able to do before. It's a fascinating time to be alive.
Exactly. And most LoRa sensors work on the Helium network. That is the other beauty of it, right? It's not like
hopefully,
somebody has to go create a Helium sensor.
Right.
It's like, hey, you have a LoRa sensor. with some tweaks. Of course, the manufacturers need to think about that and make it. I mean, a manufacturer would definitely be looking at the Helium and says like, yeah, with a little small tweak, I can make it work on the Helium network.
Yeah,
and that's what we need. Yeah.
Well, like I'm talking to manufacturers. I got this people counter on my desk right now. They've got about 500 of them deployed in Europe. And so I bought 12 of them to do this people counter project. And I've been talking to them. They're like, it works in Europe, but like, we don't know what helium is and we're not really sure that we're going to do anything with it. I'm just thinking to myself, like, I've got two questions. Am I so new to this that I'm an idiot and that helium is not going to work and these guys are right to be suspicious of it? Or did I get kind of in on this thing lucky and early? And then how do I convince these people, if the second thing is correct, that this is a network that they should not only be kind of paying attention to, but actively developing for? Because it seems like it's, like you said, there's not a bigger network. I don't know what the next smaller network is, but I don't have the feeling it's close.
I think the ball is in Helium's court. This is actually a very defining moment for Helium, right? So I think they had the problems of every startup blockchain out there.
Yep.
So now is actually, maybe it's like the new rev, right? It's kind of you get a fresh start with the light miners, right? So many of the problems you were speaking about are gone. So now let's see what Helium does in stabilizing the network. It is going to be more painful initially. It's going to get better, but we are all waiting to see how the network is going to pan out, and how usable the network is going to be at the end of this whole thing.
Yeah.
But if it gets usable, I mean, you have the largest network, distributed network, people's network out there, where you're able to transmit great data at fractions of a penny.
Yeah.
What do you get for a fraction of a penny?
Not a cup of coffee. So I've been, hammer and tongs learning this stuff as fast as I can for the past year and a half, but this has been your world for your career. Is there something in the IoT world that is kind of generally considered to be like a holy grail of IoT that you guys talk about and say like, hey, well, one day this is what it's going to be like? What do you see that being?
That's a hard question, right? And I think the problem with IoT is people tend to generalize a lot. You work for a big carrier, they want to do everything on cellular. You go talk to 𝗨𝗨, they want you to do everything on 𝗨𝗨. You want to go talk to 𝗡𝐴𝐴, they'll say they want to do everything on 𝗡𝐴𝐴. And I think that there lies the problem. I feel like there are some use cases which are very good for 𝗨𝗨. There are some use cases which are very good for cellular. And really, I envision a world where there's going to be a hybrid approach. And that might be, again, the Helium 5G talking, right? Because now when you have a Helium 5G, you have a 𝗨𝗨 network and a cellular network built into one device. So you're basically going into a location and you're enabling both types of network.
Yep.
One which is a very high bandwidth network and one which is a low bandwidth network but can talk miles.
Yep.
And really, I think the hybrid network is the right way to go. So when you think about that way, like for example, I'm going to give you a simple case of asset tracking. Asset tracking in the cellular space works well when you're on a freeway, when you're traveling, right? When you have GPS, when you're able to see the tower from your vehicle.
Yep.
The minute you come inside a building, based on the type of building material you use, you may or may not even have a cellular signal inside. So asset tracking on cellular fails. But now when you have a hybrid approach where you have cellular connectivity on the outdoors and a 𝗨𝗨-based connectivity on the indoors, and you have sensors capable of talking to both these networks, you have like the best case scenario. You basically are able to talk the talk in the outdoors and talk the talk in the indoors. And you build a perfect network that way.
I would have thought it'd be the other way around, that 𝗨𝗨 would be your optimal thing outside, and then maybe not cell, but...
So the difference is 𝗨𝗨, again, you're a guy who puts those poles outdoors, and you're trying to broadcast 𝗨𝗨 outside. Sure. But candidly, I think 𝗨𝗨 is very powerful inside because of the frequency spectrum it uses. it can actually disseminate quite deeply inside the building.
Yeah,
as well.
I could see that.
Compared to a cellular spectrum. So you're actually able to get in the nooks and crannies of a home or a commercial building much more than a cellular based solution. So a hybrid solution is actually a perfect blend of the two.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about 5G, because that's the other part of your title. Is that it's the IoT side, and then what's going on with 5G in your world?
What's going on with 5G? Yeah, I'm very bullish on 5G. I'm very bullish on Helium 5G, and you have other guys like Pollen and several other guys that are getting into the 5G space. With Helium 5G, yeah, I mean, I have a Freedom 5 unit over here at home and trying to wire it up and trying. I mean, I was able to use it for data, right, which is fun. The fundamental difference, the primary advantage of a Helium 5G box that you get is that you're able to get high bandwidth data inside a house, right?
Yep.
Inside a house, inside a building, and places where you do not have good cell phone coverage. If you go talk to a major carrier and say, hey, I have sucky coverage in my building, can you go address it? They'll say, oh yeah, sure, pay me $100,000 and I'll come and talk to you. Well, not everybody has $100,000 lying around. So now for $3,000, you can get a Helium 5G, and you put it where you need coverage. You connect it, backhaul it, and voila, you have coverage. So it's a very good concept. It's a very, very good concept, and I think it's going to be a massively successful product. The things that are holding it back are definitely the payment mechanisms, the whole sub-DAO, what is it, HIP 52, 53, where the payment terms have not been very clearly identified. And I think the other big elephant in the room is a major carrier signing up for Helium 5G. So if you have a major carrier signing up for Helium 5G, then you walk with that carrier into a building. Now the phone is going to automatically switch into a Helium 5G network, benefiting whoever installed the device, while at the same time it's going to provide coverage for carriers in a location where they didn't have coverage before.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a big thing. So my sense of it is that once one of the majors signed, the others will have to sign, because if I'm understanding it right, the data on the 5G side for Helium is so cheap. So like, it seems to me they're all going to hold out as long as they can and see if they can starve Helium so they don't have to cut them in on the action. But at some point, one of them is just going to say it's so cheap, like we're going for it. And you've got so much coverage that you've proven with this map. And I think my guess is we're going to see a giant flip. I don't know if you hold the same perspective.
So it is not like me versus you, right? I think it goes back to, say you have a rural town, right? You have a rural town where there's inadequate cell phone coverage. And think about a national park, right? National parks are great examples.
Yep.
You go into a national park, even you go into the guest, what do they call it? The visitor center of a national park.
Yep.
You have like the worst cell phone coverage over there, right? And in reality, the reason is because it's not cost effective for a carrier to go put a tower there, because it's seasonal traffic, people are coming in and out. Whereas it actually makes a lot of sense for a Helium 5G at that location, because hey, you have a lot of people there. You can backhaul the traffic. There are ways to backhaul the traffic, and you're able to provide great coverage at a location which didn't have coverage before. And that's the advantage. That's the advantage. And now, if one of the big three carriers goes there and they have coverage and the others don't, then it's going to be their disadvantage. Or if somebody lives in, they have a vacation home in that part of town and they don't have coverage, guess what? They're going to switch carriers. It is not going to be good for them anyways.
Yeah. No, I totally, that makes a lot of sense to me how that's playing out. I want to go back to the idea that you can have 5G and LoRa on one device. So there's the one side where I'm sure technically, obviously, it's possible.
That's utopian, by the way. I mean, the concept is utopian because it doesn't exist today. You either put a 5G radio or you put a LoRa radio. I'm just spitballing some ideas, which I think should be the ideal way people think about stuff.
So then walk me through this, because I've got this Bobber 500 that they sent me to put up. I was actually just out in the garage drilling holes in a box, because it comes as 2 units. It comes as a LoRa radio. LoRa side, LoRa radio, and the CBRS radio. And the way I looked at it is I'm putting it in my building, in my other job, Paleo Treats, that my wife and I run, like a little cookie shop on kind of Main Street America. And the LoRa radio is going up on the roof. So running Ethernet, power over Ethernet up to the roof, and then running a long Ethernet cord back down to the CBRS radio, which lives basically in the office, in the shop. But they're 2 different locations, right? Like one is up on the roof, one is down in the office. When you're saying 2 things on one device, are you thinking that, like, why not just put them both up on the roof, or am I missing some important piece there?
So doing 5G on a roof of a building, doing outdoor CBRS, it's a big science. It's a lot more complex than doing indoor 5G or indoor CBRS.
Okay.
And the primary thing you need to be worried about when you do outdoor CBRS installation is you have a teeny radio compared to somebody, an AT&T, that'll be like maybe across the street blasting, a signal like, 200 times more powerful than yours.
Yep.
So guess what? A guy on a phone walking past your house is likely to pick up the big tower rather than your teeny radio.
Yep.
So unless you're like in this national park kind of an environment where nobody around you has coverage, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to have an outdoor radio for 5G,
right?
Or CBRS. So I think that's one thing to consider. And the LoRa is actually, just because you put it outside your house doesn't mean it's not going to come inside your house. The spectrums are different, like I said.
Oh yeah.
So the LoRa spectrum is something that can, work its way through walls, work its way through its air gaps, and get into your house. It's much harder for a CBRS, a 3 gigahertz spectrum, to do the same.
Yeah.
So I think there is a difference in the way you look at the radios. But again, having said that, for most indoor use cases, you might want to have both an indoor antenna as well as an outdoor antenna, right? Maybe you might want to look at both of them.
Yeah, I did. I don't see it. There's a better way to do it than this way, but it doesn't seem to be kind of the best way. And the other piece that I think of is that a place for a 5G deployment is not always a great place for a LoRa deployment, and vice versa. Right? Some of the best LoRa, and this is maybe more on the side of the HNT earning piece, but a great LoRa thing is like up on a mountain, which is not a great 5G
thing. That's true. That's very true. Again, this is where we are hitting the limits of, hey, are you a miner or are you an IoT guy? Right? If you're an IoT guy, you might do things in a particular way.
Yeah.
But if you are in it for the mining, you might want to do it in another way. But again, the whole proof of coverage eventually is going to disappear, right? As the number of units increase exponentially.
Do you think it will?
The proof of coverage is going to... Sorry?
Do you think so? The question I've got with the units is we got 800,000 online now, and I was saying to people, maybe we were all talking like, oh, there's going to be 3.5 million hotspots online by the end of the year. Whatever that number is, I'm kind of looking at it now and saying, okay, unless it's someone like maybe you guys, where there's an incentive on the IoT coverage side to deploy, for a normal person, it's making less and less sense to buy a miner at any price and deploy. Like the pressure to deploy is really dropping, and we're coming to what appears to be, to me, like a balance of saying, okay, well, your ROI is now at like the 10 to 14 month. At some point of ROI, it's just going to stop driving people to buy miners. How are you guys seeing that? Yeah, how are you guys seeing that, if at all, differently?
So I think the way LoRa was set up was the tokenomics was a little flawed. That's the best way to put it, right?
Sounds like you're being
So I
nice.
think
Okay.
the intention was always that people are going to buy more data and use more data on the LoRa network,
Yeah.
and but then the POC incentives were set up in such a way that it actually people got drunk on it.
Oh yeah.
People got drunk on it, and now it's like when the POC earnings starts diminishing, they're like scratching their head, what the hell happened, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, on the LoRa side, I think eventually the DC earnings have to kick in. And again, that's going back to the point that you have the world's largest LoRaWAN network
Yeah.
through Helium. People are going to find use cases to use that network. And when they start using that network, you not only get the POC credits, you also get the DC burns,
Yeah.
the data credit burns on the network.
Yep.
On the 5G side, I think they thought about it a little better. And on the get-go, there is a higher bucket of tokens allocated to just data credits, right?
Yep.
So basically, if you are in a location which has high density and you have a whole bunch of people using the network, you're going to make a lot more money than somebody at a location which doesn't have enough people, right? The POC is just kind of a drop in the bucket compared to the data credits that you're going to earn. You're going to earn 50 cents a gigabyte worth of data of HND for just bypassing that data. So just figure, if you're in a location where you're able to, your coffee shop or your cookie shop, if you're able to make people lounge over there and get them to spend maybe five terabytes of data a month, you're walking away with $2,500 worth of Helium tokens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the whole thing is exciting. It's curious to see where it'll go. And I think to the point of, decide this question, are you a miner or are you an IoT guy? Is I think the only reasonable answer for longevity is I was a miner. I'm learning to be an IoT guy.
Yeah. IoT is hard. IoT is, it has a lot of potential, but it is hard. And it's hard because, when machines talk to each other, there are a lot of nuances. Just because you measure something doesn't mean the sensing is right. You might have to add some logic on top of that sensing to kind of make sure it's right.
Yeah.
So you have to add intelligence. So intelligence at the edge is kind of the other concept which is required.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the joke I heard? The E in IoT is for easy. Yeah. Which I'm finding to be true. It's interesting to see the intelligence at the edge. I mean, even these little LiDAR people counters is, I think, like, oh, well, that's got to be magic. It's, something to do with light and radar and all the rest of it. Like, it's got to be able to tell that a person is walking by, and it's not that leaves are shaking. But so far, it doesn't appear to be that easy to figure that out. And
yeah,
it's just, I mean, there's a lot of prizes, a lot of money, a lot of value on the table right now for the folks who figure it out, and that's probably the most exciting thing for both of us.
And that's why the whole intelligence at the edge comes into play, right? I mean, I had an old Roomba that used to go around my thing. It used to go all over the place, go nuts, right? And today, you get a new Roomba. It measures the room. It kind of draws a boundary on top of it, and it cleans up every square foot of your home. That's amazing, right? And it's just 2 or 3 years apart. That same thing is happening to every sensor technology in the world.
Yeah,
where you're able to build more intelligence on the sensor side.
I'm so psyched. I got a buddy of mine whose now wife is way into horse racing, horse showing, whatever, horses. So I was like, well, I'll put a people counter up at her stable and we'll count how many horses go in and out. And I've got another buddy who runs a camel farm about an hour away from my house. And it's like, oh, well, let's see how many camels we can count. And just thinking about, for us as humans, like, what's obvious, which is a horse and which is a camel. But for these people counters or any kind of thing, it's like, it's probably not as obvious for them. But if you can figure that out, it opens up a ton of other doors for the other things that you can figure out and compute at the edge, which is yet another exciting kind of place where humans are figuring things out.
Somebody's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. No, it's rad stuff. Ripping. Well, thanks a ton for coming on today. Was there anything else that you wanted to hit? Anything else? I mean, I would say for folks who are looking to get into the helium side, obviously Emrit's a great play for the folks who are like, yep, I don't want to buy a full price miner, and I don't mind taking a little bit of the HNT and sending it back. Is there anything else you kind of put on top of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we call that the retail business of Emrit. We also have so MinerTech. So MinerTech is a new brand that So maybe first let me talk about retail.
Sure.
So with regard to retail, I think the key points are light hotspots are here. They're going to be more stable. We're going to build the network. Emrit is there to help you. So we have 3 different pricing tiers. So based on your level of interest in helium, you can go on emrit.io and sign up for one of those plans and get a miner. We have a ton of units in stock, so you'd probably get one right away.
Yep.
So that's the first point. And then the second point is for those of you that are looking at fleet operations, and now with the helium and in the future with the Helium 5G, Emrit is building a new brand called MinerTech, which is going to be able to help you manage your fleets, all the way from device procurement to deployment to management of your earnings, as well as your quality of service, SLA, as we spoke about it. And we are building several other products for large fleet operators too. Today, if you want to provision a miner, you need to connect by Bluetooth and do one by one. We have the ability to provision multiple units at the same time. So if you're a fleet operator, we can actually go get your fleet up and running in no time. So those are some of the innovations we are looking at, and this is we learned quite a bit from our journey with helium in the last couple of years, and we are opening it out to whoever wants to use it.
That's super cool. It's super cool to see all the different players in the game and see the folks in the kind of on the bigger end of the spectrum where you guys are saying like, okay, here's how we move in this space and kind of healthily grow it. So I'm excited for you guys to be a part of it.
Great.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much for coming on. I will, psyched to have you here and psyched to see what happens with Emrit.
Thank you.